Some people laugh the loudest when they think you can't hurt them back. I've always thought moments like that tell you exactly who someone really is. Not later. Not behind closed doors. Right there, in front of everybody. The ballroom at the Whitmore Grand Hotel glowed under warm gold chandeliers, polished enough to reflect the light like glass. Crystal flutes clinked. A jazz trio played near the far wall. Waiters in pressed white jackets moved between tables carrying trays of sparkling water and champagne, while downtown Chicago shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows nearly 40 stories below. It should have felt elegant, calm, the kind of room people talked about all week after leaving. But the second Janelle Carter stepped through the doors, something shifted. She felt it immediately, that familiar tightness in her chest. Like her lungs suddenly forgot how to work. She hadn't come to make a scene. She hadn't come for revenge. Honestly, she almost turned around twice before walking in. But the real estate attorney had insisted the final property transfer needed signatures tonight. In person. No delays. No excuses. So she came. One black dress. Simple silver earrings. Small clutch in one hand. Nothing flashy. Nothing meant to prove anything. Her curls framed her face softly, and her heels clicked against the marble floor as she walked toward the private dining area, where Brandon Whitmore stood laughing beside a table full of investors and friends. He looked exactly the same. Tall, crisp white dinner jacket. That expensive watch he always adjusted when he was trying to impress somebody. Claire Bennett stood beside him in a fitted emerald dress with one hand resting lightly on his arm, while he told a story everyone seemed eager to laugh at. Then Brandon saw Janelle and smiled. Not warm, not surprised. That smile she remembered too well. The one that always came right before he said something sharp enough to leave a bruise you couldn't point to later. The conversation around him slowed. People turned. Claire followed his gaze. Janelle kept walking. Calm. Quiet. Chin lifted. Just get the paperwork signed and leave. That was the plan. Brandon raised his glass slightly and gave her a long look from head to toe before letting out a short laugh. Well, look who made it. A few people chuckled. Janelle stopped 3 feet from the table. Her fingers tightened around the clutch. I'm here for the documents, she said evenly. Brandon leaned back like he had all the time in the world. You know, he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. I really thought you'd stop showing up eventually. Claire smiled into her champagne. Someone at the table glanced down awkwardly. Brandon kept going. But I guess some habits are hard to break. Janelle swallowed hard. She could feel eyes everywhere now. People pretending not to stare while staring anyway. She hated that feeling. Hated how public silence could feel louder than shouting. Brandon stepped closer, just enough. Smirking. Still crying over a marriage you couldn't keep, Janelle? The words landed hard. A few guests froze mid-sip. The jazz music kept playing. Somebody laughed under their breath. Janelle looked down for half a second. Just 1 second. But Brandon noticed. He always noticed weakness fast. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard. Tried to breathe. Tried not to let him see anything. But tears slipped anyway. Quiet. Uninvited. And Brandon actually laughed. Right there. In front of everyone. Like her pain was entertainment. Like she was exactly where he wanted her to be. And the entire room went still. Janelle wished more than anything that she had listened to herself and stayed home. Some rooms feel wrong the second you walk into them. This one had felt wrong before she even reached the elevator. Brandon's laugh still hung in the air, sharp and careless, while the people around him pretended they were not staring straight at her. Nobody stepped in. Nobody said a word. That part always bothered me more than the cruel comment itself. It is strange how quickly a room full of adults can become completely silent when someone decides humiliation is entertainment. Janelle lifted her chin even though her throat felt tight. Her eyes burned. She hated that Brandon had managed to pull her back into this feeling so fast. Like no time had passed. Like she was still standing in their old kitchen years ago while he made her feel small with one sentence, and then acted like she was too sensitive for reacting. Claire swirled her champagne slowly and tilted her head with a smile that did not feel friendly at all. You know, she said, looking Janelle over carefully, I actually expected something more dramatic tonight. A few quiet laughs circled the table. Janelle kept her voice even. I am only here to sign paperwork. Brandon leaned against the edge of the table. Relaxed. Comfortable. Like he owned every inch of the room. Then let us not waste everyone's evening. He picked up the folder from beside his glass and held it loosely between two fingers before setting it down again. Deliberately slow, like making her wait amused him. Janelle stepped forward and reached for it. Brandon's hand covered the papers first. Funny thing, he said. When we bought that house, you kept talking about how it would always feel like home. He smiled wider. Guess that changed. Janelle felt her chest tighten. The lake house in Michigan had once meant Saturday mornings by the dock. Coffee on the deck. Music from the old kitchen radio. Then lawyers. Signatures. Empty rooms. Brandon knew exactly which memories still hurt. He always did. Claire laughed lightly and looked toward another woman near the table. I mean, she really thought she was building forever. More laughter. Not loud. Somehow quieter laughter always feels meaner. Janelle stared at the folder. Just sign and leave. That was it. 30 seconds. Brandon finally slid it toward her. She opened it. The legal tabs were marked in gold. Her hand stayed steady, even though she could feel tears threatening again. She signed the first page. Then the second. Brandon watched every movement. Still wearing the bracelet? He asked suddenly. Her hand paused. She looked down. Thin silver on her wrist. The one her mother gave her years before she passed. Brandon smirked. I always wondered why you kept things long after they stopped matching. That one landed deeper than he probably realized. Janelle blinked hard and signed the last page. Her vision blurred for a second. She hated that. Hated that she could feel tears building again with people watching. She closed the folder carefully and handed it back. Done. Brandon took it, looked at her face, saw the tears she was trying to hide, and smiled like he had just won something. Then from somewhere behind Janelle, calm and clear, a man's voice cut through the silence. I think that is enough. The room did not move for a second. Not one glass lifted. Not one chair shifted. Even the jazz trio near the windows seemed to hesitate. Janelle froze with her hand still half lowered from passing Brandon the folder back. That voice had not been loud. It did not need to be. Calm voices can change a room faster than shouting ever could. Brandon turned first. Claire followed him. Janelle slowly looked over her shoulder. Adrian Sinclair stood a few feet behind her near the entrance to the private dining room, one hand resting lightly in the pocket of a charcoal overcoat, expression unreadable. He was taller than Brandon by a few inches, broad shoulders, dark tie, polished black shoes catching the chandelier light. The kind of man people recognized before introductions even happened. Chicago business magazines had covered him for years. Real estate, private equity, hospitality. His name was attached to buildings downtown, hotel renovations on the lakefront, and investment deals half the city watched closely. But Adrian almost never attended events like this in person. Brandon blinked fast, then forced a smile. Adrian, did not realize you were joining us tonight. Adrian glanced at him for exactly 1 second before looking back at Janelle. Her eyes were still bright from trying not to cry. He noticed immediately. Janelle hated that she could not hide it. Claire straightened. This is a private dinner. Adrian answered without looking at her. I was invited. His voice stayed low, steady. Then he looked directly at Brandon. And I believe I just walked in at the wrong moment. Brandon gave a short laugh. Too fast. Nothing serious. Just paperwork between former spouses. Adrian's eyes moved to the folder in Brandon's hand. Then to Janelle again. Did she say she wanted an audience for that? Brandon's jaw tightened. No offense, but this is personal. That is exactly why I asked. A server nearby nearly stopped moving. Claire folded her arms. She is fine. Janelle wished everyone would stop looking at her. Her cheeks felt hot. Her hands colder by the second. Adrian noticed her shaking fingers and stepped closer, just enough for her to hear him clearly. Are you all right? Simple question. Quiet. Genuine. And somehow that almost made her tear up worse because nobody in that room had asked her that all night. She gave the smallest nod she could manage. Brandon saw it and smiled again, sharper now. Come on, Janelle. You do not need rescuing. Adrian turned slowly. Brandon kept going. We were having a conversation. She gets emotional. It happens. A few people looked away immediately. Even Claire did not smile this time. Adrian held Brandon's stare. No, the single word landed harder than anything louder would have. Brandon shifted his weight. Excuse me. Adrian stepped beside Janelle now, shoulder nearly level with hers. Calm. Unmoved. What happened here was not a conversation. Brandon laughed under his breath. You are misunderstanding. Adrian looked at Janelle's face. Then at the tears she was trying hard not to wipe away. Then back to Brandon. No, he said again. I understood exactly what I saw. Brandon opened his mouth to answer. But before he could say one more word, Adrian reached up slowly toward his coat as the entire room watched in complete silence. Adrian slipped his coat off in one smooth motion and draped it gently over Janelle's shoulders before anyone could say another word. The fabric was warm from his body. Heavy cashmere, dark charcoal. It settled around her like a shield. Janelle inhaled sharply without meaning to. Cedarwood and clean winter air. The coat reached almost to her knees, and for one strange second she forgot where she was. Forgot the lights. Forgot Brandon standing there. Forgot every eye in the room. It was just warmth. Quiet. The kind of kindness that catches you off guard when you were bracing for something colder. I have always believed small gestures hit harder than big speeches. Anybody can talk. But stepping forward, when everyone else steps back, that says everything. Brandon looked stunned for exactly 1 second before forcing another smile. Really, he said lightly. That is unnecessary. Adrian ignored him completely. He adjusted the collar near Janelle's shoulder where it had shifted. His voice stayed low enough for only her to hear. You do not need to stay if you do not want to. Janelle looked up at him. She had met Adrian Sinclair exactly once in person almost 3 years ago at a charity hospital fundraiser downtown. Less than 10 minutes. No personal conversation. Nothing memorable on his side, or at least she thought so. Yet he was standing beside her now like he had every right to be there. Brandon gave a short laugh and picked up his champagne. This is becoming dramatic for no reason. Claire added quickly, exactly. Nobody was attacking anyone. Adrian finally turned. His expression stayed calm, but colder now. Then why did the room go silent? Claire opened her mouth and stopped. Brandon rolled his shoulders. You walked in halfway through something private. Adrian stepped one pace closer to the table. Not aggressive, not rushed, just steady. I walked in and saw a woman standing alone while an entire table watched her cry. Nobody answered. The silence felt different now, sharper. A man near the investor's table quietly set his drink down. One woman looked at Janelle and then looked away. Brandon tried smiling again. It looked thinner this time. You are making assumptions. Adrian nodded once. Possibly. Then he reached for the signed folder still in Brandon's hand. Brandon hesitated. Adrian took it anyway, glanced at the signature tabs, and handed it directly to one of the attorneys standing nearby. You can file those. The attorney took it immediately. No argument. Brandon stared. Excuse me. Adrian turned back toward Janelle. Would you like water? She blinked. Nodded once. Adrian motioned toward a server who hurried over and placed a glass in front of her. Her fingers trembled when she picked it up. She hated that Brandon could still make her shake. But the cold knot in her chest had eased just enough to breathe again. Brandon saw that too. And he hated it. Janelle, he said, sharper now. Do not act like this is some rescue. Adrian looked at him directly. Nobody asked for your permission. Brandon's jaw tightened instantly. Claire stepped closer to him. Brandon. But he barely heard her. He was staring at Adrian like he had just realized something was slipping out of his control. Janelle pulled the coat tighter around herself. The ballroom lights reflected against the windows. A waiter passed carrying silver trays. The music had stopped entirely now. Brandon swallowed and gave Adrian a hard look. You seem awfully invested in this. Adrian adjusted one cuff and answered without hesitation. You have no idea. Brandon laughed like Adrian had made a joke. But nobody joined him this time. That was the first thing Janelle noticed. 10 minutes earlier Brandon had owned the room. Every comment landed. Every smile came easy. Now people were shifting in their seats, glancing at each other, checking Adrian, checking Brandon, trying to figure out what they had missed. The balance had changed. Fast. It is amazing how quickly confidence disappears when somebody powerful stops playing along. Brandon took a sip of champagne and set the glass down harder than he meant to. I think everyone here is overreacting. Adrian remained beside Janelle, one hand resting lightly on the back of the empty chair near her. Calm. Unmoved. Then this should be simple. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Adrian nodded toward the chair. Sit down, Janelle. His tone was gentle. Janelle hesitated for half a second, then sat. Adrian pulled the chair in for her slightly before stepping back into place beside her shoulder. Small gesture, but the entire table saw it. Claire noticed too. Her smile was gone now. Brandon folded his arms. You are making this theatrical. Adrian finally looked directly at him again. No, I am giving her the respect this room should have shown from the beginning. Silence. Brandon looked around as if expecting somebody to support him. Nobody moved. One investor near the center cleared his throat and looked at his phone. Another quietly stepped back from the table. Brandon's jaw tightened. Adrian, with all respect, this has nothing to do with you. Adrian adjusted his cuff and answered evenly. Actually, tonight it does. Brandon stared. How exactly? Adrian looked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows for a second. City lights reflected across the glass. Then he said it plainly. Whitmore Development has a pending financing agreement with Lakecrest Capital. Brandon blinked. Yes. Adrian nodded once. I acquired controlling interest in Lakecrest 2 weeks ago. Claire inhaled sharply. Somebody near the bar almost dropped a glass. Brandon's expression changed instantly. Not panic yet, but close. You bought Lakecrest? Adrian said nothing. Brandon gave a quick laugh that sounded forced now. That is not public. No, Adrian replied. It was finalized this afternoon. Janelle looked up at him, stunned. She had heard Brandon talk about Lakecrest for months. It was his biggest project. Luxury condo towers near Navy Pier. If financing disappeared, everything paused. Claire stepped closer to Brandon. You said that deal was locked. Brandon ignored her. His eyes stayed fixed on Adrian. This is business. Adrian's answer came fast. No. Then he glanced toward Janelle sitting wrapped in his coat, shoulders finally starting to relax. Business is tomorrow morning. The room stayed dead quiet. Brandon swallowed. You would risk a major partnership over a misunderstanding? Adrian tilted his head slightly. You keep calling it that. Brandon stepped closer. What exactly do you think you saw? Adrian answered without blinking. A woman standing alone while you mocked her, and everybody watched. Brandon looked at Janelle. Tell him. She stared back. For the first time that night, she did not feel small. Brandon's voice softened, trying another angle. Janelle, come on. Adrian's expression did not move. Do not put her in that position again. Claire looked genuinely nervous now. Brandon ran one hand over his jaw and forced another smile. But it was cracking. This is ridiculous. Adrian glanced at the attorney across the room. Hold Whitmore's documents until further review. The attorney nodded immediately. Brandon turned pale. Then his phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He checked the screen, and his expression dropped completely. Brandon stared at his phone like he had stopped understanding what he was reading. The screen lit his face pale under the chandelier glow. One missed call, then another, then a string of messages stacking so fast he could barely unlock the screen. Claire leaned toward him. What happened? Brandon did not answer. His thumb moved quickly, eyes narrowing, then widening. Lakecrest Capital had paused the wire transfer pending executive review. The first payment was frozen. The lender's legal team wanted immediate documentation before releasing anything else. Janelle watched his expression shift, and for the first time in a long time Brandon looked uncertain. Really uncertain. Not irritated. Not annoyed. Unsteady. There is something about seeing a person lose control after years of acting untouchable. It does not feel loud. It feels quiet. Almost unreal. Brandon forced a breath and slid the phone into his jacket pocket like nothing mattered. Temporary delay. Adrian said nothing. Brandon straightened his shoulders and gave a quick smile toward the guests. Everybody relax. Nobody relaxed. Claire looked from Brandon to Adrian. This is because of tonight. Adrian's voice stayed level. No. Tonight simply reminded me why certain decisions should be made carefully. Brandon stepped closer. You planned this. No. Adrian glanced toward Janelle, then back. You planned tonight. I happened to walk in. Janelle sat very still with the coat wrapped close around her. Her hands were warm now. She could breathe again. But her heart was racing because none of this made sense. Adrian Sinclair did not appear at random dinners. He definitely did not intervene in personal arguments. And Brandon knew it. Why are you doing this? Brandon asked. Adrian took a second before answering. Because some things should not be ignored. Brandon laughed under his breath. You barely know her. Adrian's expression did not move. That is where you are wrong. Janelle looked up immediately. Brandon noticed. You know him? He asked sharply. No, she answered honestly. Not really. Adrian looked down at her, and for the first time there was something softer in his expression. Familiar. Almost thoughtful. You met me once. Janelle blinked. She searched his face. The hotel lights. The sharp suit. The calm eyes. Nothing clicked. Adrian gave the smallest nod. Northwestern Memorial. Winter fundraiser. 3 years ago. Janelle froze. Memory hit fast. The pediatric wing fundraiser downtown. Snow outside. A crowded reception room. Her volunteer badge clipped to her black dress. She had helped check guests in because a coordinator called out sick. Adrian had arrived late with a board member. She remembered his name because someone whispered it. But that had been it. Or so she thought. Brandon frowned. You met for 5 minutes? Adrian looked at him. No, then back to Janelle. You left the fundraiser before it ended. Her throat tightened. I had an overnight shift. Adrian nodded once. Yes. Brandon folded his arms. And Adrian's jaw tightened slightly for the first time all night. And afterward my younger sister was admitted upstairs unexpectedly. The room stayed silent. Janelle felt her chest go still. Adrian continued. She was scared. She had complications after surgery. Nurses were short that night. Family was delayed because of the weather. His voice stayed calm, but lower now. And someone stayed with her. Janelle stared at him, then remembered. A college-age woman with dark curls. For monitors. Snow against the windows. She had sat with her for almost 3 hours between rounds because the girl had been terrified to be alone. Adrian looked directly at her. You stayed. Brandon's face changed again, and Adrian added quietly enough for the whole room to hear. You were kind to my sister when nobody asked you to be. I never forgot that. For a second Janelle could not say anything. The ballroom faded into the background. The lights. The glasses. The low murmur from the staff near the doors. All of it blurred while that memory came back piece by piece. Northwestern Memorial. January. Snow piling against the windows downtown. She had almost gone home after the fundraiser ended, but one of the pediatric nurses had asked if she could stay a little longer because they were short-staffed upstairs. Janelle remembered walking into that room with a blanket folded over one arm and finding a nervous young woman staring at the ceiling, trying hard not to cry. She remembered talking about random things for hours. Coffee shops near campus. Music. Chicago winters. She remembered holding the woman's hand while doctors updated her. But she had never asked for names. She had not stayed because of status or connections. She stayed because somebody looked scared and alone. That was it. Adrian's voice pulled her back. My sister Emma still talks about you. Janelle blinked. Emma. Adrian nodded. She was 21. Terrified. Trying hard not to show it. A small smile touched his expression for the first time all night. You brought her terrible vending machine hot chocolate and convinced her the hospital socks made everyone look ridiculous. Janelle stared. Then without meaning to she laughed softly through the lingering emotion in her throat. She remembered. Emma had hated the socks. Brandon looked completely lost now. You are telling me this is about hospital hot chocolate? Adrian looked over calmly. No, his voice cooled again. I am telling you I watched someone treat my family with kindness when there was absolutely nothing to gain from it. Claire folded her arms tighter. That still does not explain tonight. Adrian turned toward her. Then let me make it simple. He looked directly at Brandon. People reveal themselves when they think nobody important is paying attention. Brandon gave a quick laugh, but it sounded hollow now. You are taking this way too personally. Adrian answered immediately. No. You made it personal the second you decided public humiliation was acceptable. Janelle looked at Brandon. For years she had been the only one seeing that side of him. The comments disguised as jokes. The polished charm disappearing behind closed doors. The way he could cut somebody down and then act confused when they reacted. Tonight, everybody saw it at once. Brandon felt it too. His confidence was slipping. You are seriously threatening a multi-million-dollar project over this. Adrian shook his head. Your project was already under review before I got here. Brandon's eyes narrowed. Then why mention it tonight? Adrian glanced toward Janelle. Because now I know my instincts were right. Claire stepped back a little. Even she looked uncomfortable. Janelle tightened Adrian's coat around her shoulders. Warm, steady, safe. It had been a long time since she felt protected by anyone. Brandon noticed her holding the coat closer, and something flickered across his face. Not anger. Something messier. He looked at Janelle longer than he had all night. Really looked at her. The woman he had dismissed. The woman standing taller now than she had when she arrived. Adrian reached for a glass of water from a passing tray and handed it to her. Drink. She did. Her hands barely shook anymore. Brandon swallowed hard. Then his phone buzzed again, louder this time. He looked down. 3 new calls from Laycrest Legal. 1 voicemail marked urgent. And before he could silence it, another message lit the screen. Claire saw it too. Her face changed instantly. Then she whispered under her breath, "Brandon, why is your board asking for an emergency meeting tonight?" Brandon looked down at his phone, and everything in his face changed. Not just concern, not annoyance, real panic. The kind of person tries hard to hide, but cannot quite cover fast enough. Claire grabbed his arm lightly. "What is happening?" He pulled the phone closer and read the message twice, like maybe the words would change. Emergency board review. Immediate attendance requested. Laycrest financing paused. Investor confidence concerns. Brandon swallowed and typed something fast with one thumb. No response came back. Then another message hit. His CFO. Then legal. Then a second board member asking where he was and why they were hearing about funding issues from outside counsel. The room felt tighter by the second. Nobody pretended not to watch anymore. Every eye was openly on Brandon now. Funny how fast attention changes direction. An hour ago, Janelle had walked in feeling like the smallest person in the ballroom. Now she sat wrapped in Adrian's coat, while Brandon looked like the floor beneath him had shifted 6 inches without warning. "Claire," whispered sharply, "you told me the financing was secure." Brandon lowered his phone. "It is." "Then why are they calling an emergency meeting?" "Claire, why are they calling?" He did not answer. Adrian stood beside Janelle with one hand resting lightly against the chair back. Calm. Steady. Brandon tried one more smile for the room. "Everybody, excuse us for a minute." Nobody moved. The attorney near the far table quietly closed his folder. 2 investors exchanged a look and stepped farther back. One of Brandon's senior partners cleared his throat and said carefully, "We may need to discuss this tonight." Brandon turned. "Not here. The board disagrees." That hit harder than anything else. Brandon stared at him. The man shrugged apologetically. "I just got the notice too." Claire let go of Brandon's arm completely. Her face had gone pale. She looked at Adrian, then back at Brandon. "Did you know about this?" Brandon snapped quietly. "No." Adrian spoke for the first time in nearly a minute. "You may want to answer those calls." Brandon glared at him. "Are you enjoying this?" Adrian's expression stayed unreadable. "No." Then he looked directly at him. "I simply think accountability feels different when there is an audience." Janelle felt that sentence in her chest. Brandon did too. He looked at her. Really looked. For the first time all evening there was no smirk. No practiced confidence. Just frustration and disbelief. Janelle. Her name came out softer than before. Almost careful. She stood slowly. Adrian stepped back just enough to give her room, but stayed near. Brandon lowered his voice. "I did not mean for tonight to turn into this." Janelle held his stare. "You meant every word you said." Claire looked away immediately. Brandon opened his mouth. Closed it. Because he knew she was right. The ballroom doors opened as another attorney entered carrying a tablet. He walked directly toward Brandon. Quiet. Professional. "The board is waiting on video conference." Brandon stared at him. Now. Claire stepped back another foot. Brandon's partner moved toward the windows, answering his own phone. The whole room had changed shape. The laughter was gone. The music never restarted. Just ringing phones and quiet voices, and the sound of confidence slipping away in real time. Brandon looked from the attorney to Adrian to Janelle. Then he saw Claire pick up her purse. "Where are you going?" he asked. She gave a strained smile. "I think you need to handle your night." Then she walked straight past him without looking back. Brandon stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, while every screen around him kept lighting up. Brandon stood there with his phone still lighting up in his hand, while the ballroom kept moving around him without waiting. The attorney was speaking quietly beside him. Investors were checking their watches. Staff were clearing untouched glasses from the tables. The energy had completely changed. It no longer felt like Brandon's room. It felt like a place he was trying to hold on to while everything slipped through his fingers one call at a time. Janelle watched him for another second and realized something she had not expected. She did not feel angry anymore. She did not feel the old pressure in her chest or that desperate need to defend herself. She just felt done, truly done. And honestly, that kind of peace feels stronger than revenge ever could. Brandon finally looked up at her. His voice came out lower now. "Tired." "Janelle, wait." Adrian stayed beside her, but did not speak. He did not need to. Brandon took one step closer. "I know tonight got out of hand. Janelle held his stare. No. Tonight showed exactly what has been there for a long time. He swallowed hard. That is not fair. She gave the smallest shake of her head. You laughed when I walked in. You laughed when I cried. And the only reason you stopped was because somebody you respect happened to be standing here watching. Brandon had no answer. The attorney beside him cleared his throat again and held out the tablet. Sir, the board is waiting. Brandon ignored him. His eyes stayed on Janelle. That is not all I feel. Janelle heard him, but the words landed differently now. Too late has a sound to it. Quiet. Empty. Adrian reached for the ballroom door and pushed it open. Cold Chicago night air drifted in from the hallway beyond. Brandon's voice followed one last time. Janelle. She turned halfway back. Brandon looked shaken in a way she had never seen before. I made mistakes. Janelle nodded once. Calm. Honest. You did. Then she added quietly. But mistakes can teach people. Cruelty only reveals them. The room went silent again. Even Brandon's attorney stopped talking. Janelle pulled Adrian's coat a little tighter and walked toward the door. Adrian matched her pace. The hallway outside felt cooler. Quieter. Their footsteps echoed softly against polished marble. The elevator doors at the far end reflected city lights from the windows. Janelle exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. Adrian looked over. You okay? She smiled a little. Tired but real. I think I am now. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. They stepped inside. As the doors closed, Brandon was still visible across the ballroom floor, surrounded by ringing phones and people asking questions he could not avoid anymore. The doors shut. Silence. Then Janelle looked down at the coat around her shoulders and laughed softly. I should probably return this. Adrian smiled for real this time. Keep it tonight. The elevator began moving. And somewhere between the 40th floor and the lobby, Janelle felt the weight she had carried for years start to lift. Sometimes the people who mock your tears believe they are witnessing weakness. They think pain makes you smaller, easier to dismiss, easier to control. But real life does not work that way. The truth is kindness matters. Character matters. The way you treat people when nobody important seems to be watching matters more than most people realize. Because respect has a way of coming back around. And so does truth. By the time the elevator opened onto the lobby, Janelle stepped forward with her shoulders back, Adrian's coat warm around her. And for the first time in years, she was not walking away feeling rejected. She was walking away remembering exactly how much she was worth.